countdown is on now to the presidential debate between Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. That's all coming to an end.
Tomorrow, both candidates will face off at 9 p.m. at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. ABC is hosting the debate, which will run for 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. Joining us now to preview the debate is Politico reporter Jessica Piper. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So both candidates' microphones will be muted when they aren't speaking, and they won't be allowed to question each other. How do you anticipate that to go over with both of the candidates?
Well, the microphones are certainly an interesting one. You know, back when President Joe Biden was the Democratic nominee, his campaign actually wanted the microphones to be muted because they were worried about former President Donald Trump talking over him and making him look weak. Now that it's, Vice President Kamala Harris, her campaign, which is, run by the same people mostly, was actually hoping the microphones would be unmuted. I think they thought that, Trump would try to talk over her and look like kind of a jerk. But the original rules are what ABC News is going with. I think at the end of the day, there are issues in this debate far more important than the microphones, but it's certainly made for some pre-debate drama.
So this is going to be the first time many voters who are still getting to know Vice President Harris as a presidential nominee. What strategy does she need to employ to potentially dominate or at least put herself in a position where she looks far superior to the former president?
Well, yeah, as you note, voters are still getting to know Kamala Harris a bit more than former President Trump, right? He's been a candidate in 3 cycles now. He's very well known. Harris is also well known, but less so. I think one of the keys for her is going to be to try to draw a distinction between some of the frustrations that voters have had under Joe Biden's presidency and sort of what she would offer if she is president. So trying to distance herself, for example, from inflation, from high housing costs by putting forward, what her plans would be to address that as president. And so to not be associated with the things that voters don't like about what's going on in the country right now.
Now, former President Donald Trump is once again choosing not to do any traditional debate prep, but instead holding policy meetings with advisors. How does that approach hurt or help the former president?
Well, former President Donald Trump has done maybe as many presidential debates as anyone has ever done, right? Between 2016, 2020, now this cycle. So he's never really been one for traditional debate prep. And, you can say that's benefited or hurt him in the past, but he kind of prepares the way he prepares. I think that the messaging from his campaign around policy is interesting. Certainly that's an area where he's not been very specific, where in past debates he's often seemed very all over the place. I think for him to be able to talk coherently about policy in the debate would be to the benefit of his campaign, and we'll see tomorrow if he's able to do that.
Speaking of some of the things you just mentioned there, he's been very ambiguous. Obviously, his position on abortion seems to change on a day-to-day basis depending on what he feels his constituents want to hear. How do you expect Vice President Harris to really kind of drill down on that topic and during the debate?
Absolutely. I'm sure that abortion is something that Vice President Harris is going to want to talk about a lot. It's been a winning issue for Democrats, and it's something where, Trump has been, as you say, really all over the place. I expect, Harris is going to try to really challenge him on the issue. She's going to probably draw attention to, the potential for a national abortion ban. She's going to draw attention to a lot of the state abortion bans that are already in place. And she's going to try to really hold him responsible for those abortion bans and argue that, the judges he appointed who overturned Roe v. Wade enabled those laws to be in place. So I expect her to really hone in on that.
And what key issues do you anticipate will define tomorrow's debate?
Well, abortion is certainly one of them. I think on the sort of, what Trump is looking to talk about, certainly inflation, the economy, also immigration and the border has been a really key issue for Republicans this cycle. And we would certainly expect him to hammer on that as well.
Politico reporter Jessica Piper, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And CBS News will have special coverage of Tuesday's presidential debate hosted by ABC. Primetime coverage begins on CBS 2 at 8 p.m.